Before stickers on albums and moral crusaders calling rock and roll the devil's soundtrack, there was one shocked parent in Ohio who set off a nationwide battle about music censorship. Buckle up, friends, this story gets wild. It all started in Cincinnati, Ohio in 1983 when a man named Rick Alley bought the new Prince record, 1999, after hearing the single Little Red Corvette. When he got home, he put it on the family stereo and everything was fine until they flipped the record over and heard the song Let's Pretend We're Married, which is full of all kinds of words that would surely get me demonetized. The parents scrambled to turn this record off before their 8 and 11-year-old children could hear it, but the damage had been done. Alley and his wife Mitzi decided to take the story to the Cincinnati newspaper, who encouraged him to take it to the local PTA, who then moved the complaint onto the national PTA. This thing grew very quickly, and it was right around this time that a couple of ladies in Washington got involved, who would really bring the spotlight to this conversation. Susan Baker, wife of Treasury Secretary James Baker, told a rather shocking story about her 7-year-old daughter hearing the new Madonna single on MTV and coming into her asking questions about what a virgin was. And perhaps the most high-profile person in the case, Tipper Gore, wife of Senator and later Vice President Al Gore, claimed to have had a similar experience with her daughter and Prince's song Darling Nikki, which was on the Purple Rain soundtrack, one of the most popular films of the year, which incidentally had an R rating. The women quickly got on board, and with financial contributions from Joseph Coors, the owner of Coors Beer, and Mike Love of the Beach Boys, both vocal supporters of Ronald Reagan, along with backing from 5.6 million PTA members across the country, they established the Parents Music Resource Center. Their initial goal was to create ratings for records similar to those used for movies. Soon, through the connections that they gained by poking and prodding their friends in high places around Washington, they were eventually able to pressure their way into a meeting with the Record Industry Association of North America, who promised that within a year something would be done about censoring certain words in music, labeling material that they deemed inappropriate, and restricting music that didn't adhere to these standards from widespread airplay. A year went by though, and not much happened. So the PMRC started to push their influence into the media, and they began to get attention from talk show hosts like Good Morning America and Oprah. In 1985, the PMRC created a list of 15 songs that they deemed deserving of being banned from the radio. They called it the Filthy 15, including music by Prince, Judas Priest, Motley Crue, AC/DC, Def Leppard, Madonna, Cyndi Lauper, Black Sabbath, and many others, as well as Twisted Sister for their song We're Not Gonna Take It. The song was huge on a global scale, certified gold in the United States and 8 times platinum in Canada, which was pretty wild for a virtually unknown band, but that was the 80s. The music video definitely helped. During the era where videos started to be produced with huge budgets to gain their coveted spots in the rotation on MTV alongside the biggest artists in the world. Twisted Sister nailed it, from their over-the-top drag metal makeup to chasing the dad around the house teaching him a lesson about rock and roll. The video is funny, and the song is a bit cheesy, but it's got its charm. The PMRC, however, saw the lyrics and the imagery as violent. The majority of young fans at the time didn't grasp the seriousness of what was going on here, but the musicians and the music industry at large were very concerned at what this kind of censorship would mean for music and art going forward. Let's put this in context. If you like my content, don't forget to smash the like and subscribe buttons and ring the notification bell so you never miss a video. Now let's get back to it. This is peak Reagan-era America. The economic policies, the foundation for cultural values, and the toxic nostalgia for the glory days of the 1950s were all heavily based in conservatism. Organized religion was more powerful than ever, and the government was pouring money into the so-called war on drugs. At the very same time, the national debt was rising. The AIDS crisis was starting to become something impossible to ignore, and the crime rate was climbing right alongside the wealth gap. When it all started, it may have been about the children.
Won't somebody please think of the children?
as Tipper Gore and Susan Baker would famously proclaim. But as the media picked up the story and it made its way into the courtroom, it was clear that the music was being used as a tool to push arguments for political gain. They claimed that the rise in crime and drug use and sexually transmitted diseases were due to the increase in illicit themes in popular music. Meanwhile, on the other end of the scale, the 80s was a decade of debauchery as much as it was of abundance. Self-expression was at an all-time high. There was a huge cultural shift that was mirroring the advances that were being made in technology. The world looked much different than it had just 10 years earlier. So on one hand, the fear that the parents had about the media that their children were consuming was valid. There was a lot of new stuff happening at the time. It was a lot to keep up with in a world without the internet. At the same time, a lack of recognition that this was the world that their children were living in, and that it was no one's job but their parents to protect them, made their entire argument look weak and unsubstantiated. In 1985, the National Association of Broadcasters jumped on board the censorship train and served over 4,500 radio stations with letters implying that they would risk their licenses if they continued to play music with explicit lyrics. They also demanded that record labels send lyrics to radio stations in advance for the purpose of predetermining if the music should be allowed. This was a ton of work and a huge pain in the ass for the music industry on all levels. In August that year, 19 record companies in the United States agreed under pressure from the recording industry of North America to put parental advisory stickers on albums that they deemed inappropriate. September 19th, the same year, the Senate Commerce, Technology, and Transportation Committee held a day of what they called informal hearings on the subject of pornographic song lyrics, where the PMRC, represented by Tipper Gore and Susan Baker, made their arguments.
Mrs. Baker, thank you very much for being with us. Please proceed.
We believe that the music industry has a special responsibility as the message of songs goes from the suggestive to the blatantly explicit. There is a new element of vulgarity, violence, and brutality to women that is unprecedented. Today, parents have no way of knowing the content of music products that their children are buying. What can be done to help parents? We believe something can be done, and Tipper Gore will discuss a possible solution.
We have asked the record companies voluntarily label their own products and assume responsibility for making those judgments. We have also asked that lyrics for labeled music products be available to the consumer before purchase in the marketplace. Labeling is little more than truth in packaging. The Parents Music Resource Center is not advocating any federal intervention or legislation whatsoever.
On the opposing side were three members from the music industry itself. Frank Zappa, clean-cut and well-spoken as anyone else in the room, he led the discussion with suggesting that the Record Industry Association of America shifted its stance as a result of political pressure compromising artists' rights to support a proposed blank tape tax. This bill, stalled in Congress for over a year, would add a 5 to 25% premium on tape recorders and 1 cent per minute on blank cassettes, raising the cost for consumers. The collected funds would be redistributed to record manufacturers and music publishers as compensation for losses from piracy, which the RIAA claimed was costing the industry millions annually.
The PMRC proposal is an ill-conceived piece of nonsense which fails to deliver any real benefits to children, infringes the civil liberties of people who are not children, and promises to keep the courts busy for years dealing with the interpretational and enforcemental problems inherent in the proposal's design. No one has forced Mrs. Baker or Mrs. Gore to bring Prince or Sheena Easton into their home. They insist on purchasing the works of contemporary recording artists in order to support a personal illusion of aerobic sophistication. Ladies, how dare you? The ladies' shame must be shared by the bosses of the major labels who, through the RIAA, chose to bargain away the rights of composers, performers, and retailers in order to pass H.R. 2911, the blank tape tax, a private tax levied by an industry on consumers for the benefit of a select group within that industry. The major record labels need to have H.R. 2911 whiz through a few committees before anybody smells a rat. One of them is chaired by Senator Thurmond. Thurman. Is it a coincidence that Mrs. Thurman is affiliated with the PMRC? I can't say she's a member because the PMRC has no members. Their secretary told me on the phone last Friday that the PMRC has no members, only founders. I asked how many other DC wives are non-members of an organization that raises money by mail, has a tax-exempt status, and seems intent on running the Constitution of the United States through the family paper shredder. The PMRC has created a lot of confusion with improper comparisons between song lyrics, videos, record packaging, radio broadcasting, and live performances. These are all different mediums, and the people who work in them have a right to conduct their business without trade-restraining legislation whipped up like an instant pudding by the wives of Big Brother. Is it proper that the husband of a PMRC non-member founder person sits on any committee considering business pertaining to the blank tape tax or his wife's lobbying organization? Can any committee thus constituted find facts in a fair and unbiased manner? This committee has three that we know about: Senator Danforth, Senator Packwood, and Senator Gore. For some reason, they seem to feel there is no conflict of interest involved.
The PMRC actually sought out John Denver to testify, in a move that they would later regret. They figured he's the most wholesome musician alive and would absolutely provide a brilliant argument that music did not require explicit lyrics to be considered good. But what they'd forgotten was that John had been through this same game before about a decade earlier when his song Rocky Mountain High was banned from several radio stations for its promotion of drug use. And he was a staunch defender of the First Amendment.
I'm here to address the issue of a possible rating system in the recording industry. These hearings have been called to determine whether or not the government should intervene to enforce this practice. Mr. Chairman, this would approach censorship. May I be very clear that I'm strongly opposed to censorship of any kind in our society or anywhere else in the world. I've had in my experience 2 encounters with a sort of censorship. My song Rocky Mountain High was banned from many radio stations as a drug-related song. Obviously a clear case of misinterpretation. And Mr. Chairman, what assurance have I that any national panel to review my music would make any better judgment? Discipline and self-restraint, when practiced by an individual, a family, or a company, is an effective way to deal with this issue. The same thing when forced on a people by their government, or worse, by a self-appointed watchdog of public morals, is suppression and will not be tolerated in a democratic society. Mr. Chairman, the suppression of a people or of a society begins, in my mind, with the censorship of the written or spoken word. It was so in Nazi Germany. It is so in many places today where those in power are afraid of the consequences of an informed and educated people. In a mature and incredibly diverse society such as ours, the access to all perspectives of an issue becomes more and more important. Those things which in our experience are undesirable generally prove to be unfurthering and sooner or later become boring. That process cannot and should not be stifled. On the other hand, that which is denied becomes that which is most desired, and that which is hidden becomes that which is most interesting. Consequently, a great deal of time and energy is spent trying to get at what is being kept from you. Our children, our people, our society, and the world cannot afford this waste.
Those statements had a tremendous impact. But due to his knowledge of shock tactics, the impact of the speech made by Dee Snider, the only one of the 3 musicians who had a song on the Filthy 15, was maybe the most impactful of all. Dee showed up in full glam, head to toe as if he'd shown up to perform on stage. And he explained very calmly and very clearly that he was in fact also a Christian and that his music was being unfairly targeted.
My name is Dee Snider, that's S-N-I-D-E-R. I'd like to tell the committee a little bit about myself. I'm 30 years old, I'm married, I have a 3-year-old son. I was born and raised a Christian, and I still adhere to those principles. Believe it or not, I do not drink, I do not smoke, and I do not do drugs. And I pride myself on writing songs that are consistent with my above-mentioned beliefs. I would like to use this occasion and show just how unfair the whole concept of lyrical interpretation and judgment can be, and how many times this can amount to little more than character assassination. I have taken the liberty of distributing to you material and lyrics pertaining to these accusations. Accusation number 1. This attack was contained in an article written by Tipper Gore. In this article, Ms. Gore claimed that one of my songs, Under the Blade, had lyrics encouraging sadomasochism, bondage, and rape. The lyrics she quoted have absolutely nothing to do with these topics. On the contrary, the words in question are about surgery and the fear that it instills in people. Furthermore, the reader of this article is led to believe that the 3 lines she quotes go together in the song, when, as you can see from reading the lyric, the first 2 lines she cites are an edited phrase from the second verse, and the 3rd line is a misquote of a line from the chorus. That the writer could misquote me is curious, since we make it a point to print all our lyrics on the inner sleeve of every album. As the creator of Under the Blade, I can say categorically that the only sadomasochism, bondage, and rape in this song is in the mind of Ms. Gore. Accusation number 2. The PMRC has made public a list of 15 of what they feel are some of the most blatant songs lyrically. On this list is our song, We're Not Gonna Take It, upon which has been bestowed a V rating indicating violent lyrical content. You'll note from the lyrics before you that there is absolutely no violence of any type either sung about or implied anywhere in the song. Accusation number 3. Last Tuesday, a public forum regarding the lyric controversy was held in New York. Among the panelists was Ms. Gore. Ms. Gore made the following statement, quote, "You look at even the t-shirts the kids are wearing and you see Twisted Sister and a woman in handcuffs sort of spread eagle," unquote. This is an outright lie. Not only have we never sold a shirt of this type, we have always taken great pains to steer clear of sexism in our merchandise, records, stage show, and personal lives. Furthermore, we have always promoted the belief that rock and roll should not be sexist, but should cater to males and females equally. I feel that an accusation of this type is irresponsible, damaging to our reputation, and slanderous.
It definitely made a statement, but unfortunately, it didn't do much to change what had already been put into motion. The RIAA agreed to put labels on records that they deemed were containing explicit content at their own discretion. And within a few years, there was pressure being put on artists to produce clean versions of their songs. But the consumer reaction remained unchanged. The tipper stickers, as they were originally called by people, only made them want to hear the music more. So I'm curious, what do you think? Do you think the PMRC had a point with regard to protecting children from adult content? Were the musicians correct in their arguments about freedom of speech and expression? Let me know in the comments, and if you like my content, don't forget to like and subscribe.